Hi everyone, welcome to Image Analysis 7. This week we're focusing on the topic of gender and the global care chain. Our image for today focuses specifically on domestic workers. This means people who work inside of homes. They may take care of children, they may do cooking, they often do cleaning, and as you can see, this is a very, very gendered profession. Now, of course, we have migrant workers who are both female and male. We do end up seeing more male migrant workers who work in factories, who work in like farming or agricultural workplaces. But for most of the domestic care, we can see that the vast majority of them are women. You can also see that there is definitely quite a bit of movement around the world, with 99% of them being foreign born. Now, there's also quite a few concerns about abuse that's experienced by domestic workers, because often these are jobs that are under the table. They're not overseen by government agencies. So you can see here, the statistic is that 90% of them are not getting health benefits from their employers. 21% are, experience all sorts of verbal abuse. This is definitely, a major issue when people don't feel like they have legal recourse. They don't have any way to report someone. We also can imagine that some of these statistics may actually be underestimated, since people might fear some kind of retribution from their employers. You also can see that many of them are sending money back home. We call that remittances. So remittances are when people travel abroad, they move somewhere to work, but then they send money back to their country of origin or their home country. So now let's take a look at the employers. You can see that the vast majority of them are white, and many of them are born in the United States. We also have many of them who work in, who live in Europe and work in Europe. A big part of the reason for the global care chain, the reason that we have families hiring nannies, for example, domestic workers who either live in their homes or, come to their homes every day, is because we now have both the male and female partner in the household doing work outside of the home. So again, this is kind of shifted in terms of gender dynamics, the idea of having both partners at work during the day and therefore needing some kind of child care instead of, the notion of the woman staying at home and raising the child herself. So a big part of this is that, many of these women, they're working in full-time jobs, and these are often jobs that are paid pretty highly, enough so that they feel like they can end up hiring some kind of outside care. Now, I do want to, of course, mention, as we saw in our last image, that there is still massive underpayment, though, often no benefits. So even though, I do want to point out that the employers often are making decent money, that does not always translate to the domestic workers making significant amounts of money. And in fact, we see that with, childcare workers within the United States too. It's unfortunately a very, very undervalued, employment occupation. All right, everyone. So that is our, quick overview of gender and the global care chain. We'll be exploring this more throughout the entire week and looking at different expressions of this. Okay, I'll see you all online.